So you might have heard that Pewdiepie was recently blacklisted by the Chinese Communist Party. And let's be clear, this is not a sign of power from the Chinese regime. This is a show of desperation. It shows that they are no longer trying to hide their tyrannical nature. It shows that while in the past they did these things behind closed doors, a person might get quietly blacklisted. A person might have something quietly happen, and maybe they'll be offered a deal that will allow them to stay in China or continue broadcasting in China. Not anymore. The Chinese Communist Party is going after the NBA, it's going after the South Park guys, now it's going after Pewdiepie. It's doing things in an extremely open and apparent way. And this is a show of how desperate it has become and how much it fears what is taking place in Hong Kong right now. So y'all may remember last time I mentioned that I'd go a bit more into psychological warfare, ideological warfare, and these kinds of things. In the future, I might do a real in-depth one on that, but for now, let's mention one important point. Ideology is one of the most powerful forces in this world, and the Chinese Communist Party understands this. And why is that? Ideology controls what you buy. Ideology controls who you vote for. It controls what you support and what you oppose. It controls the idea of whether you go on the streets and protest or whether you sit at home and watch TV. Everything in this world is, let's say, influenced by ideology. Every action is influenced by ideology. Every belief, every system of power in this world is fueled by ideology. And whoever controls ideology is the one who, say, controls that whole system. When we get into the ideas of psychological warfare, it is strategic tactics meant to alter the way you perceive reality, right? And so for the Chinese Communist Party, this is one of its main holds on power. And when it reaches abroad, it's one of the main things it tries to project. I mentioned in the last episode, the Three Warfares Doctrine, which is actually integrated into its military code. Three warfares are psychological warfare, media warfare, and legal warfare. And there's a bigger picture to this, which is the entire system of what they call unrestricted warfare. And that is culture war, drug war, media war, psychological war, economic war, cyber war, even going into asymmetrical warfare tactics, biological warfare, so on, all these different things. I mean, good close to 30 different tactics, and not limited to those. And so when we understand warfare, as the Chinese Communist Party interprets it, we can't just look at guns and bullets. We need to look at the entire realm of what are the powers that control society. And ideology is one of the main ones. So what happened to Pewdiepie? Now, Pewdiepie is an interesting character. He's not your normal, I guess you can now call him a Chinese dissident, right? So, long story short, he does these he got famous doing these Let's Play series of video games. Now he does more commentary and things. He's moved away, he still does them, but he's moved away a bit from the Let's Play kind of video game things. He's a huge voice on YouTube, of course. I don't need to go into who Pewdiepie is, you all already know. But what did he do that got China so angry, the Chinese Communist Party so angry? Well, he did a video where he said Xi Jinping, the supreme leader of the Chinese Communist Party, looks like Winnie the Pooh. And of course, that's a meme among the Hong Kong protesters. This is a meme in China. They compare him to Winnie the Pooh. It's kind of funny. I mean, you can look at some of the memes. They're pretty funny. He knew ahead of time that doing that would get him blacklisted, but he did it anyway. And I think that says a lot about his character. We live in an age where everyone's told to speak their truth. Everyone's told to stand up for what they believe in, even if it means costing you everything. All this stuff that really at the end of the day turns out to be a whole lot of surface talking point nonsense that means you can say whatever you want as long as it lines up with whatever the narrative is. If you say anything else outside the narrative, the same people who say speak your truth and all these other things come out and lash out at you. It's all a bunch of talking point nonsense. But you know what? He did it. He did it in a way that I think is true to what being honest and having integrity actually represent, where he's not afraid to speak out against tyranny. He's not afraid to speak out against things he sees that are wrong in the world. even if it means that by doing so, he goes against the grain and against his own financial interests. And so the Chinese Communist Party blacklisted him in China. And he did a video that was kind of joking about it. He doesn't seem like he's too devastated by this fact. In fact, most of his video was not necessarily about him being blacklisted, but on this character. I don't want to criticize the poor guy. His name's Bart. And basically he got recruited by a Chinese company to do these viral TikTok videos. You know, China controls TikTok, where he goes and does English versions of Chinese pop songs, and people commented that it looks like a terrible episode of Black Mirror, of this dystopian future where a guy is singing and dancing in front of his laptop at home while being secretly just horribly miserable inside, or at least looking horribly miserable. And so this brings us into where we're at now. I mentioned that the fact that the Chinese Communist Party censored Pewdiepie is not a show of strength. It's a show of fear. And this is an important point, I think, to understand when looking at what's happening in Hong Kong. The Chinese Communist Party is terrified that what is happening in Hong Kong is going to continue, which it is continuing. Of course, Epoch Times, we have reporters on the ground in Hong Kong. We can say that there is no sign whatsoever that the Hong Kong protests are dropping in any way in terms of enthusiasm or size. I think not only that, but the protests started because the Hong Kong students, and I think others, not just students, getting involved, did not want this law that was coming into place that would allow the Chinese Communist Party to enforce its laws in Hong Kong. They have a one-party, two-system setup. The Chinese Communist Party technically, Hong Kong's technically under the Chinese Communist Party, but Hong Kong is supposed to technically be self-governing. This new law they protested against would basically override that. It meant that you could be held liable to the Chinese Communist Party's laws if you were in Hong Kong. And so if you're a religious believer, if you practice Falun Gong, if you're house Christian, if you're a Tibetan Buddhist, maybe you could be persecuted. If you write something on the internet and say, I don't like Xi Jinping, I think he looks like Winnie the Pooh. Well, guess who's coming knocking at your door? That would have been the reality of that, very possibly been the reality of that. So they came out they went on the streets, they protested. The Hong Kong government folded very quickly, and they decided to not push that law, but the Hong Kong protesters continued. And why did they continue? This is an important point. The protests as they stand now are no longer about that law. The Hong Kong protesters saw something. They saw that Hong Kong is not an independent state as they believed it was. They saw that Hong Kong is under the heel of the Chinese Communist Party, and that its government and its police force work in cahoots with the Chinese Communist Party. They are protesting now not against that law. They are protesting against the very nature of the Chinese Communist Party's involvement in Hong Kong. This is important to know. And of course, the Chinese Communist Party knows this. The movement in Hong Kong is one to overthrow the tyranny of the Chinese Communist Party itself. And if they can succeed in Hong Kong, it means that the Chinese regime loses control of Hong Kong. And if it loses control of Hong Kong, its ambitions with Taiwan are gone. And not only that, but that's a show of weakness. That shows that it can no longer control its people as it once did. And already it understands that it's in a vulnerable position. It understands that in every regard it should, talk with them and concede and see what their demands are and try to work something out. But it will not do that, because doing so is, when you're a tyrannical regime, right, your main source of control is through two things: personal interest and fear. The Chinese Communist Party is very quickly losing control through personal interest. The Trump financial war with China right now is hitting them very hard economically. And not only that, but with or without that, they were already in a pretty rough state financially. A lot of the Chinese economy is a Ponzi scheme. They print money, they say whatever they want it to say on the books, and then they roll with that. They build ghost cities. They want to keep people working. Jobs have no purpose. They're trying desperately to push the economy out of China through the One Belt, One Road initiative. That's the situation. The Chinese Communist Party is very quickly losing its control through personal interest and finance. That is fading right now. And at the same time, it's seeing that it's losing control through fear. And Hong Kong is a perfect example of this. People are being told that the Chinese military is rolling in, that there are police dressed as military soldiers being brought in from the mainland. This is what people are being told. They saw that a protester could be shot. They see the Chinese police, who they always talk about, oh, the Chinese police don't carry guns, but American police carry guns. Look how much more, look how much better we are. Well, now they're carrying guns. Because as soon as, should I say it, as soon as the mask comes off of that regime, suddenly you see exactly what it is once more. And so, of course, against an unarmed populace, waving guns in the faces of an unarmed populace, they want there to be violence, because as soon as there's violence, they can react with violence. They can crush it. People are warning of a repeat of the Tiananmen Square massacre. People are being, abducted from their homes, disappeared. There's a girl raped in prison. There's bodies being found in the river. These kinds of things. People realize that they are going out on the streets and protesting at significant risk to their own personal safety and their own well-being, but they are willing to do it. And that is something that I think the significance of that is something that hasn't quite hit home with maybe the world abroad. That means the Chinese Communist Party is no longer able to control through fear. It is terrified of what is taking place in Hong Kong. And when it comes to individuals like Pewdiepie getting censored, why are they doing that? It is not an act of strength. It is an act of fear. The Chinese Communist Party is no longer trying to hide the fact that it can silence the NBA, that it can silence Hollywood, that it can silence, mainstream voices in the global and American public. It has that influence. It can tell you what you can or cannot say. It can compel your speech. Think about that. It can determine what the influencers in this country can or cannot say because of financial interest. And so the Chinese Communist Party censoring Pewdiepie is a show of its weakness, and it's a show that the Chinese Communist Party is losing its main holds on power. And I think Pewdiepie handled it well. He laughed at it. He doesn't care. And I think that his willingness to sacrifice his own personal interest, to stand up against tyranny as it exists under the Chinese Communist Party, is a show of good integrity. So that's a wrap for today. Let us know what you think. We're probably going to be doing a couple videos like this every week going forward. Eventually, maybe we'll do them live. Let us know if you'd like that. We're also going to keep up doing the interviews. We're going to get some really interesting ones going forward. I think you'll like them more, even more than what we had in the past. And of course, we're also planning some in-depth kind of monologue or analysis type videos, which I also think you'll all really like. But that's it for now. Everyone, please remember to like and subscribe. See you next time.